6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We begin today in Peru, where Peru's gold exports to China in the first half of this year have already exceeded the entire 2024 export figures, signaling a significant shift in trade dynamics. The surge demonstrates China's increasing demand for Peruvian gold and its strategic approach to diversifying commodity supply sources. The development highlights Peru's potential to leverage its natural resources for economic growth while navigating complex global trade conditions. From Reuters, quote, China's appetite for gold, driven by both industrial demand and private consumption, has surged in recent years. Experts suggest that this increase in imports from Peru is likely influenced by China's strategic policies aimed at diversifying its supply of resources and bolstering its commodity reserves in response to uncertain global trade conditions, end quote. Next, we travel across the Atlantic to Africa, where Human Rights Watch reported that the M23 rebels, allegedly backed by Rwanda, massacred at least 26 civilians in North Kivu province of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in late June 2025. The killings occurred during violent clashes between rebel forces and Congolese government troops, highlighting the ongoing instability in the eastern DRC. The DRC government has condemned these attacks and called for international intervention and investigations into Rwanda's potential involvement. From Reuters, quote, the current escalation of violence has not only exacerbated the already dire humanitarian conditions, but also left communities in constant fear. Survivors recount an atmosphere of terror as they fled, leaving behind their homes, property, and sometimes family members, end quote. We travel back across the Atlantic to Mexico, who is experiencing an anticipated inflation increase during the first half of August, with the consumer price index projected to rise 4.88% from 4.78 in July. This uptick is primarily driven by rising energy and food costs, challenging the Bank of Mexico's previous efforts to control inflation. Despite mandating a restrictive monetary policy, external economic pressures continue to impact the country's inflationary trends. From Reuters, quote, the spike in inflation sharpened in the wake of rising costs for food and energy, key components in the national basket of goods that Mexican authorities use to measure inflation rates. While the Bank of Mexico stringent monetary policy had managed to restrain inflation earlier this year, the continuous external pressure, especially those affecting energy resources globally, have continued this instability, end quote. Next, we travel along to China, who is implementing significant welfare reforms following a landmark court ruling that impacts small businesses. The new regulations aim to improve workers' rights and working conditions with maintaining economic growth. These changes represent a delicate balancing act of social welfare enhancement and economic stability for small enterprises. From Reuters, quote, the recent court decision has sent ripples through the small businesses community, and the balancing act between stringent regulations and economic incentives will determine the outcome of this welfare reform test, end quote. Then we travel south down to New Zealand, who's facing unprecedented security challenges characterized by complex geopolitical tensions, political terrorism risks, and critical cybersecurity vulnerabilities. The government report released and emphasized the urgent need for strategic defense infrastructure enhancement and increased multilateral cooperation to address emerging threats. The Indo-Pacific region evolving dynamic has particularly become concerning, and it was requiring a comprehensive reassessment of national security approaches. Now we travel to Europe, where, quote, a shocking incident involving a man subjected to extreme violence while live streaming has sparked a national investigation in the country. French authorities are probing the circumstances of the man's death, which was broadcast on social media platforms, highlighting the significant concerns about online content moderation and platform responsibility. The case has raised urgent questions about the ethical boundaries of live streaming and the potential for real-time violence to be publicly displayed. From Reuters, quote, the deeply unsettling nature of this incident has ignited a nationwide debate about the responsibility of social media companies companies in moderating content. Despite technological advancements, there seems to be a persistent gap in rapid detection and intervention in cases where content clearly violates platforms' policies and potentially risks lives, end quote. And of course, if you want to read any of these articles in their entirety, you can find all the links in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Tuesday and Thursday, as well as the main podcast on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.